are live. Welcome in on YouTube and Facebook. This is the Extra Points Podcast. We are the college football experience. I am Gus. That is Will. It's a great Thursday evening. Will, I'm excited for another week to be back with you talking college football, man.
Yeah, man. Big 10 win totals tonight. This is probably our second favorite conference. I think me and you both kind of like this conference a lot. A little underrated, I think, especially down here in the South with the people that we know. But college football is right around the corner. Camps started Monday.
Yeah, for a bunch of teams.
Yeah, for a bunch of teams. So I've been kind of keeping up with it online to see how it's going, to see some quarterback battles because I'm a quarterback guy. So, but that being said, man, how's it going with you?
Pretty good, man. Just excited for college football. It just turned to August. So, man, we're in the month where today's the third. Yeah. So we got
Tomorrow's fourth, yeah.
like a little over 3 weeks until week 0 kicks off, dude. So, I mean, it is time. It is really, really close.
It will be here before we know it. Week 0 will be here in a blink of an eye. High school games are starting to kick off. I know we got some scrimmages this Friday.
That's crazy.
I know, man. It'll be here before we know it. So excited to have football back.
Like, it honestly just felt like last season ended. Kind of felt like the new year just happened. And I mean, like, time's flying by. But before we get into these Big 10 win totals, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. We're going to have some amazing content coming over there. We've been shooting around our ideas with a bunch of people, and they've been absolutely loving the ideas. Now we just got to put them on film, and then we got to bring them to y'all. And then we're also on Spotify. We are on Apple Podcasts as well. And just don't forget to subscribe, like, share, because we are coming.
Hey, man. I want to say thank you for your mom. She spotlighted me.
Oh, yeah, on the Faces of LaGrange.
Yeah, and she mentioned our podcast on it. And man, I had some people reach out wondering how they could listen to it. So I sent them our links and stuff. So thank you, Miss Kathy Golden, for the shout out to the college football experience.
She is the GOAT. Breaking down the Big 10 win totals, man, kind of like you were saying. I'm super excited. There's a bunch going on in this conference, from expansion to them getting rid of divisions next year. Not this year. Kind of wish it was this year, but that's starting next year. Man, this is one of the power conferences where people are saying, hey, it's no longer a Power 5, but it's a Power 2. And they're for sure number 2. Maybe if they're adding USC, they're adding UCLA in 24. They might be looking at adding Oregon, Washington. Do you think if they add Oregon and Washington, they'll be on the same playing field as the SEC? Or do you think they'll still be just a little below?
Just still below. I think they got to prove it on the field first before because I mean, Georgia absolutely just destroyed Oregon last year, and they beat Michigan too the year before that, and then they beat Ohio State. So, and then like Florida beat Utah, and Utah can't beat you, and USC can't beat Utah.
Yeah.
So, just still below. If they can prove it on the field, yeah, I could see them catching it up, but they got to prove it on the field first before I.
And I also think a bunch of those teams have to pick it up and kind of in recruiting. Like, you have to think of Nebraska, you have to think of Iowa, you have to think of Wisconsin's got to pick it up. Teams like Illinois that are kind of picking it up, but then they also have teams dragging them down, like Northwestern, Indiana, Rutgers.
Go look at the top 15 recruiting rankings.
Like
10 of them. 10
of
the 15 are SEC teams. So I mean,
especially once we add Oklahoma and you add Texas, I think once you add those in, like 10 of the 15 are all SEC teams.
Well, I was already counting them because it's a 24 class.
Yeah, so. True. Very, very true, man. But starting off with the team that Georgia did beat in the Peach Bowl last year, the Ohio State Buckeyes. They're opening up at 9.5. No, 10.5. That is my bad. Man, what do you think about the Buckeyes going in to 2023?
Ohio State's historically really good. They're going to be good this year. I think for me, quarterback competition, it looks like it might be McCord. Look
Mm-hmm.
like he's probably going to be the starter. Can Jim Knowles get the defense better up front? Because
Mm-hmm.
here's the deal: you're just playing until you get to that Penn State game and then the Michigan game. Essentially,
Yeah.
can you play up front? Can you stop the run? And can you beat Michigan? All right, Ohio State does not lose to Michigan 3 years in a row without somebody losing their job.
I don't think Ryan Day's going to lose his job if they
No,
get beat again.
they'll do something with the coaching staff
Yeah.
before they get to him. They'll say, "Dude, you
Yeah.
got to make a change."
Yeah.
Um, I'm gonna go ahead and jump into it, dude. I'm hitting the over with them. They'll go 11-1. I just don't know who their one is.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's either Penn State or Michigan. I just don't know who it is, but it's one of them. But they're going over.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah.
I'm going Ohio State under
Wow.
10.5. I think their schedule is a little sneaky. I mean, think because we have it pulled up here. It's at Indiana, Youngstown State, Western Kentucky. Jokes. Then they kind of have a slight stretch here. They're at Notre Dame. That's week 4. Then they're off. Then they get Maryland at home. They're at Purdue, Penn State, at Wisconsin. I think they could drop a game in those 5 games. I 100% think that they could, just because of kind of what you were talking about, that physicality that they've seemed to have lacked on the defensive line. And
Yeah.
they really haven't been able to get pressure on the quarterback that much the past couple seasons. And I mean, Notre Dame is a very physical team. Penn State is going to be a very physical team. And then even though Phil Longo's coming into the Wisconsin, Luke Fickell has said, we are going to run the football. That is going to be our identity. We're going to run the football. And they have a great running back in Braylon Allen at Wisconsin. And then I think they lose to Michigan again. So I think
Oh, wow.
I
Again.
I think they're going 10-2.
All right, dude. If he goes 10-2, dude, he ain't gonna get fired, but he's gonna be in trouble.
The seat would be hot going into 24.
Yeah. I'll say this, dude. Luke Fickell can coach a defense up, man.
Right.
And even when
Right.
he was the defensive coordinator at Ohio State, man, they had a top 5 defense almost every other year.
See?
So
And
I
I mean,
know
they're right there at the Penn State, and then they're going to Wisconsin. That's back-to-back weeks, really physical
yeah,
teams.
that
I mean,
is
goodness.
that's gonna be tough, man. I mean, but they also have like one of the best players in the country on their offense.
Yeah.
I mean, they're
They're
stacked
loaded at wide
in.
receiver.
Yeah, they're stacked at the wide receiver. Their running back might be one of the best in the country, dude. He's underrated. People don't know much about him, dude. He is a stud.
Yeah, they have Williams and Henderson,
Yeah, dude.
a great duo.
Man, dude, their quarterback just needs to just kind of manage the game, get the ball in these guys' hands, and dude, they will make plays. I think they'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Majority of those games. We were gonna go to this game, Ohio State Penn State game. I
But
was
as
thinking
we kind of sagaed in our last episode, screw
yeah,
SeatGeek.
yeah, yeah. Man, I think Penn State might do it. I think there might be their one.
Dude,
They're
I'm
my
telling
sleeper. They're my sleeper in this year's in the Big 10 in the college football playoffs.
you. Mm-hmm.
People, watch out, man. Penn State's a really good football team, and they might can upset the old Buckeyes in the horseshoe.
Dude, and plus something else about that Ohio State offense is the big question mark going into spring was what's the offensive tackle spot going to look at, and it didn't look good. So they had to go get a transfer from San Diego State. So their season kind of hinges. Can this transfer
Well,
from San Diego State? I think his last name is Simmons. Like, can he one can he stay healthy, and 2, can he perform and can he
well,
provide high quality at
I'm
that left
sure
tackle?
they
I think it's the
will.
left tackle.
They'll rotate guys to see who the best one is, and
Mhm.
You kind of want to put your weaker one. A lot of times we put our weakest offensive lineman at center, just teach them how to
Mhm.
snap the ball. Because college is definitely harder to hide them, but man,
Yeah, it's a lot different in
it's
college to hide them.
yeah. Um, but dude, that Notre Dame game will be fun. They have a more experienced quarterback this year.
Right.
Last year, if they would have had a better quarterback, they probably could have beat Ohio State. So
Yeah.
that game's actually going to be fun. Ohio State actually has a little tougher schedule than the
A
rest of
lot
the
of
Big
people
Ten,
think,
man.
yeah, dude, because I mean, because them having to play a Notre Dame for the non-con, and then their cross division, they get the favorite in the West, and then they also have to play Minnesota too, who's a top 3 team in the West, which is going to be a
Yeah,
really fun division. And I mean,
yeah, man.
it's just kind of a tough schedule. So I'm going under 10 and a half. You're going over. I think yours is definitely the more favorable pick, but
Yeah, it's a
I,
safe
I
pick,
just
man.
I
It's
just
a
got a
safe
feeling.
pick.
I just
Yeah.
got a feeling that they're going under and
Well,
they're
I could
gonna
see it
lose.
happening with those 4 games. I mean, I could
Yeah,
see it happening.
it's
A lot of
it's just
uncertainty.
right, and, like, these games can be decided with a single play, these games can be decided by a single bounce of the ball, and, I
Yep.
mean, you really have to win in the margins when it comes to college football. The back-to-back reigning Big 10 champions, though, the Michigan
Mhm.
Wolverines, the over-under is 10.5 on them. Can they remain at the top of the conference? Trying to get this daggum ad off the screen so we can get their schedule pulled up. I
Their
mean,
schedule's a joke anyway. That's why the
yeah,
screen won't pop up.
yeah. There's really no point in showing it, but over under 10.5. They open up with East Carolina, UNLV, Bowling Green, Rutgers, all at home. Jim Harbaugh's probably going to be
Oh,
suspended for those 4 games, but what does it really matter? That's a joke.
I
At
bet he comes back for
Nebraska,
that Rutgers game.
he might. And then they're at Nebraska, Minnesota, Indiana at home, at Michigan State, off Purdue at home, at Penn State, at Maryland, Ohio State to close out the season. Their schedule really doesn't get rolling until November comes around. So since we've taken a look at that, over under 10.5.
Dude, can I just say, what a joke. And if I was a Michigan fan, I would be so disappointed in this. Dude, you
Mm-hmm.
you don't play a football game until November. I
Well,
mean, like,
they do go
I
to
get,
Nebraska, and they do go to Minnesota in the
I,
back-to-back
s-
weeks, but really
I do
besides
see
that,
that. I do see that, but dude, they're going to be favorites by 10 or more in both those games.
I would say probably by 14 or more.
Yeah. I mean, so they're going to be double digit favorites in every game until they get to Penn State. Um,
Mhm.
it's just disappointing, man, to see one of your potential playoff teams just have a terrible schedule.
Georgia.
Well, dude, come on, man. But but it's just not fun, dude. And it's not really good for your football team to not have any challenges.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna hit the over for them, but they're gonna lose to the Buckeyes because of this schedule, and they're not gonna be tested like
Mhm.
Ohio State's gonna be.
That
So I'm
is
hitting the
a
over at
possibility.
still they're gonna be 11-1. Dude, the Big Ten East is gonna be crazy.
Stacked. Absolutely
Stacked,
stacked.
bro.
It might be the most top-heavy division in college football this year.
It is. It
Yeah.
is.
And I mean, whenever you look at Michigan, they're bringing Blake Corum back, and he is coming off of that ACL. But they have him, they have Donovan Mitchell in what's one of the best offensive lines in all of college football yet again. So I think they're just going to be a ground and pound team. I
I will
really want to see
say,
some progression from JJ McCarthy
yeah.
because he kind of cost them the TCU game. Like
Yes, he definitely did.
he
Here's my
100%
thing
cost them.
for them. They don't need to get sleepy though in this schedule.
I
Don't
mean,
look past Minnesota at Minnesota.
yeah.
Don't look past them. I think they'll be undefeated till they get to Ohio State, but
Mhm.
I don't don't get sleepy because you can be like, oh, well, we're gonna win this game. So Let's
Well,
just move on.
because thinking back to last season, I think it was 2 weeks before they played Ohio State. It was either 2 weeks before or the week before they
Yep,
played.
struggle with
They
Illinois or somebody.
they played. I think it was Illinois at home,
Yeah, and they
and
struggled.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Dude, that Maryland game, people think that Maryland game's a sneaky game for them because you got Ohio State next. You're just probably coming off a huge win at Penn State.
mhm.
Um,
That's
and
a
you're going
trap
to
game
Maryland.
central. Trap game
Yeah,
central.
that is a trap game right there.
Mhm.
That at Penn State game is going to be tough, man. It's not going to be the whiteout. They're doing the stripes, but
Yeah.
it'll still be the same intensity. Penn State might have them a big win at that point in the season. So,
How crazy would that be if Penn State was able to pull that off and beat Michigan?
well, they would be the Big 10 East champs by then, dude. They'd win it
Possibly.
that night, possibly.
Possibly. Yeah, but I mean, I'm going over 10 and a half too, just because the combination of the talent on the team and the schedule. But man, it's I think the Michigan Wolverines are going they'll be a top 4 team in the AP and the playoff rankings all season, probably until the last game. And then even if they lose to Ohio State, just depending on what happens in the rest of the country, I mean, I think they can still get in the playoff even if they do lose to Ohio
Yeah.
State, kind of like Ohio State did last season.
Yeah, they can do it.
And
It's
so a team
possibility.
So a team we were just talking about, and can they break through? We have talked about them previously on this podcast. Penn State over under 9.5 wins. They went 10-2 in the regular season last year. Rose Bowl victory over Utah. Man, everyone is so bullish on Penn State. They open up
I'm one
with
of them.
West Virginia at home, Delaware at home, road game at Illinois. Then they get Iowa at home. I think that's going to be the whiteout game is on week 4 against Iowa at
Disappointing.
Northwestern, off UMass at home at Ohio State. Massive game. Indiana at home at Maryland, Michigan at home, Rutgers at home. And then look at this ugly game at the end of the year on a Friday at Michigan State. But look where it says it is Ford Field. They're playing their last game
Dang,
of the season
man. That
at a
game
neutral site.
might be in a blizzard, dude. Instead, they're going to be in a dome. So
So
now
stupid.
I'm not calling that a sleeper game no more because they're playing in a dome.
Yeah.
Man, that stinks.
Yep. I mean, I think Penn State, I think they're going over. And they have what I think is the best running back room in college football with Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. Their offensive line is insane. They have a great left tackle that's going to go first round in the NFL if he can stay healthy. I cannot pronounce his name, but I think it all hinges on sophomore quarterback Drew Aller. We have touched on him before.
Best recruit ever in Penn State history. Is that
I'm
correct?
I'm pretty sure it's either him or Christian Hackenberg, but I think
Yeah,
it
I
might
know.
be Drew Aller.
Yeah.
So are
I'm
you
going.
over under on Penn
Yeah,
State?
I'm over as well. I'm on
Mhm,
that Penn State train. This is my
mhm,
surprise playoff team this year.
mhm.
Look, they just got to beat one of the two. One of the
Yeah.
two big two. Just beat one of them.
Go 11 and
And
1.
yeah, dude, if you can go 11-1, you're gonna make the playoffs probably.
Yeah.
And maybe you can sneak into that Big 10 championship game and get in there and probably get a rematch with Iowa, maybe. Get in there and get you a ring before you go on play in the playoffs. So
I
I'm
just
over. I like their defense a lot too. They got two of the
mhm,
best corners in the country. They got
mhm.
probably the best secondary in the country.
They have one of them. Mhm.
So that's going to help them in the Ohio State game. I think that's probably going to be, unless Ohio State can play like Georgia or somebody in the playoffs, that's probably going to be the best corner Marvin Harrison sees all season is going to be
Mhm.
those guys at Penn State, and they can play you in man coverage. They don't need safeties over top for help. So that's going to help them get pressure on quarterbacks, create those turnovers. So I'm over for Penn State. I like them a lot.
There's two position groups that I want to kind of highlight that could maybe prevent them from hitting the over, and that's their wide receiver room. They're really going to be dependent on transfer Dante Cephas from Kent State and Malik McLean. I think he's from Alabama. I'm pretty sure he's from Alabama. I could definitely be wrong. And then they have developed a guy, Keandre Lambert Smith. So there's really going to hinge on them on the offensive side of the ball, and then their interior of their defensive line kind of lacks size, and that's kind of where they got beat against Michigan last year. I mean, we're in the game with them, and then they just got worn down on the inside of that defensive line. So if they're able to improve with those two positions groups, I definitely think they could go over. But if they underperform there, they could go under. But I have
Talent,
belief in James
talent
Franklin.
wise, recruiting wise, they've out recruited Michigan the last 2 years. So
Right.
you should be a little better than them.
Yeah.
But transfers kind of changed the game now, man. That portal changes
For sure.
everything. So it's kind of hard to judge on.
So all of our teams so far, they've been the three big boys in the East. Now we're going over to the team that's been running the West for the past couple years. The Iowa Hawkeyes, Kirk Ferentz over under 8.5. Their main question is how's the offense going to do in
Yeah.
2023? I mean, because they're kind of on a really interesting deal. The offensive coordinator is Kirk Ferentz's son, Brian Ferentz, and their offense stunk last year. It was so bad that for this season, they have a contract in place. I think he took a $50,000 pay cut. And if if Iowa doesn't win more than 7 games, including the bowl game, and if they don't score more than 25 points per game, he's fired at the end of the year.
Mm,
Yeah. So, I
weird.
mean,
Betting on himself, I guess.
yeah. But that's including non-offensive points too. So if they score on like a pick six, if they score on like a kickoff return, a scoop and score, that gets added in to the points per game. So it's kind of not a true offensive test, but it still kind of is. They open up the season Utah State, then they play for the Cyhawks Trophy at Iowa State.
I
They
hate
come
that
back
game.
home. You hate that game.
I hate it
That's
because I'll tell you why. Just a second.
Then they go to Penn State week 4. We just highlighted that. That's going to be the whiteout. Then they follow it up with Michigan State at home. That's going to be a pretty fun game. Then Purdue at home at Wisconsin. And then they go to Minnesota at home the following week, off week. Northwestern, the Wildcats Classic. Ooh, oh, that's at Wrigley Field. That's pretty neat. They get Rutgers at home, Illinois at home, and they finish the season at Nebraska. I'm going under for multiple reasons, but I mean they do still have possible suspensions with all that Iowa gambling stuff, and like even though they are getting Cade McNamara from he's a quarterback that took Michigan to the playoffs in 2021, got benched for J.J. McCarthy. They return all 5 of their starters on the offensive line. They return their leading rusher. And their defense has always been salty, but they're losing their best 3 players on defense, a defensive lineman, linebacker, and a quarterback. But it's just something about them, man. I'm going under. To have to get to 9, I mean, it'll just be tough, but I got them going under.
They can get to 9. I got them going over because
Mm-hmm.
I think they're going to win the West this year. I think the offense is going to be better. I
Mm-hmm.
think getting Cade over from Michigan is going to really help them. I think the quarterback position is what hurt them last year.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, dude, their defense was 3rd in the country last year. So
Stingy.
they can just be the same. The offense just has to get better. I mean, they were terrible last year.
Yeah.
Terrible, man. Their head coach, Kirk, I don't know how you say his last name.
Kirk Ferentz.
Kirk Ferentz. He's been there forever.
I think since 1998 or
Dude,
1999.
yeah, he's been there like 25 years, man.
That's yeah.
He knows how to coach ball. I
Hmm.
think they get it rolling this year again. I think it's over, but barely. Like, not. I think it's a 9-3 year, and I think they play in the Big Ten championship game.
I mean, because teams they could lose to Iowa State just because of the way that game is. That game is always one of the grossest games to watch,
Oh yeah. Oh, the reason why I
but
hate that game,
it is so college football.
it's on our pick'ems every year, and I don't think I picked it right in 3 years. So, and it's
Oh
always cost
man.
me because I always pick the opposite every year.
Hmm.
Because like I don't, we don't get to watch Iowa State unless they're playing Iowa or they're playing Oklahoma
Like,
or somebody like that.
yeah, dude. But I mean, I think I picked that game right for the first time last year ever. Just because something always happens because
Lucky dog.
2 years ago, I picked Iowa State and they choked the game away.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely choked it away, and then they were able to win it last year. And I think the final score it was either 17-10 or like 10-7. I mean,
It's always weird. It's always a weird
yeah,
score.
it was absolutely terrible. But I mean, I think Iowa could lose that game. I think Iowa could lose the Penn State game.
Oh, that the
Iowa
Penn
could
State game's an L.
I mean, I think Iowa could lose the Wisconsin game. I think Iowa could lose the Minnesota game. I think they could lose the Illinois game. I think they could lose the Nebraska game.
They ain't
So
losing to Illinois.
hey, don't sleep on Brett Bielema and the Fighting Illini, brother.
They're finishing those last 4 games undefeated.
Oof,
4-0
4 and
last 4
0.
games.
I
Yep.
mean, but
I s-
I'm just going under just because I think the seat under Brian Ferentz is just a little too hot, and like he'll be running a race knowing that he's getting chased, and then he'll trip and fall, and they'll fall short. And it's kind of because I'm a little bullish on this next team, the Wisconsin Badgers. Luke Fickle, first year there, coming over from Cincinnati, over under 8.5. Do you think they're going to make a splash in year one, or do
no.
you think they'll kind of be a dud?
I don't think they'll be a dud, but I don't think they're going to just surprise anybody. I got them going under at 8-4.
Mhm.
Um, I just think they're going to lose to Iowa. I think they're going to lose to Ohio State. Um, just not sure who their quarterback's going to be. I don't know if it's going to be Tanner Morka
Tan
Moradaki.
Tanner Mordecai.
Yeah, Tanner Mordecai from SMU. I don't know if it's going to be him or the Oklahoma transfer.
Mhm.
So I'm going to go under because I'm just not sure because they got their guys in there yet. They might still got,
Mhm.
Luke Fickle's looking for certain players, and maybe he still has the old Wisconsin big, huge guys that he just don't have his personnel yet. It might take another recruiting cycle to get those guys in there.
Yeah. So I mean, I have them going over. I think they're going to make a splash. I think he is going to come in there. I think he's going to kind of turn the culture around. Think Wisconsin, the I think the players are hungry. I think the fans are hungry. I think they got kind of tired of what Paul Chris was doing. I mean, it's old. It was super outdated. I think what Wisconsin did with their program is what Iowa is going to have to end up doing just because it's the direction college football is moving. I think the Big Ten's going to kind of make Iowa like say like, hey, like we got people paying all of this money to get this TV product and to get the product on the field, and y'all aren't putting up a product that's suitable for what these people are paying. And just kind of like I said, Luke Fickle's going to come in, and I think he's going to change it. He did bring Tanner Mordecai in, who was a stud at SMU. They're also bringing Phil Longo in. We have touched all on Wisconsin before, and just what I think they're going to be. I think Braylon Allen is going to be a big deal for them at running back. Them being able to keep him, and they were able to bring a couple transfer wide receivers in, so I think that's going to help them on the offense. And then he did bring defensive coordinator Tressel from Cincinnati, so I mean they do have that continuity. So I think they're going to have a giant culture shift at Wisconsin. And I think they're going over 8.5. Let's kind of look at their schedule here. They do open up with Buffalo at Washington State, who beat them last year. I mean, that was a sneaky game last season. That could be a sneaky game this season. Georgia Southern at home. Hey, you can't sleep on Southern because they went into Nebraska last year and smacked Nebraska. Then they go to Purdue. Then they got an off week. Rutgers at home, Iowa at home, at Illinois, Ohio State at home. That'll be a really fun game. At Indiana, Northwestern at home, Nebraska at Minnesota. So since you think they're going 8-4, what specific games you think pose an issue with them getting to over that 8.5?
I think that little 3-game stretch right there, Iowa, Illinois, and Ohio State's going to be tough.
Yeah.
And then I think the Nebraska, Minnesota games back to backs kind of tough.
Mm-hmm.
This is just them being their first year. Me just not. I just have to see Luke Fickell and them after this year for me to kind of gain some faith into them and see if they got their guys in there.
Yeah,
because I do know it takes a year.
Yeah.
I know the transfer portal helps. It helps
Mm-hmm.
a lot. You can flip. I mean, you can flip a program like this, but sometimes that doesn't work for longevity.
Yeah.
And I think this might take some time because Wisconsin hasn't been that good in a while. So I just maybe them trying to buy into the program, them wanting to just might take some time, man. Those are my thoughts on it.
I mean, I could for sure see it, and with just how competitive and how just crazy the Big 10 West it has been and will be this season, I could definitely see it. Now switching over to one of Wisconsin's biggest rivals, the Minnesota Golden Gophers with PJ Fleck. Do you think they'll row the boat in 2023, or do you think their ship will sink? Over under 7.5? Will.
Man, I'm gonna go under just because they have a tough schedule.
Yeah.
I mean, they play Ohio State, they play Michigan, they play North Carolina, they play Iowa, they have Wisconsin. I mean, those are some tough games. I don't know if they can. I mean, I got 3 automatic L's on their schedule: UNC, Ohio State, Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
So then it's just 2 more after that. I think they'll lose to Iowa going into Iowa. So then that Wisconsin game will be huge at the end of the year to see if they can make it to, 8, go up to 8 or go to 7.
Dude, there are a bunch of people that are high on the Golden Gophers this season. But I mean, this schedule is just brutal. I mean, that they could be 3-3 but by the time week 6 gets here.
Yeah.
And I mean, you just don't have that much room to play with then. I mean, they could very well lose. They could lose to Nebraska. They could lose to they probably will lose to North Carolina.
Well, Thursday night game with Nebraska, that's Rule's first game as a head coach. Luckily, it's at home for him.
Yeah.
So if it was at Nebraska, I'd go ahead and mark that one up too. But it's at home, so I think they can possibly win that game.
Yeah, and I mean, I just know people are high on him. Ethan Kelly McManus. They call him like the Greek Lightning, I think is his nickname. It's a phenomenal nickname, and they're really high on all of their wide receivers. PJ Fleck says it's their best group of wide receivers they've had since he's been there. And in 2019, I think they had 2 receivers get drafted in like the first. They had Rashad Bateman. Oh man, and who else did they have in 2019? I can't remember, but they had 2 receivers get drafted to the NFL. So to say it's his best group that he's had there, that is saying something. Then they also have a preseason All-American tight end, but I just think their secondary is going to be a little too leaky, and their offensive line and their defensive line, that's going to be what's going to hold this team back. Is their offensive line. They lost
so the
3
2 most important positions
Yeah.
on the team.
Yeah. So I'm going under with just the uncertainty in the
I
trenches.
love their head coach. So
PJ Fleck's the man.
yeah, dude, he a lot of energy, man. I think he could run a program pretty well. Minnesota just might not be the place. Might
I'm
need to go look
surprised that
around.
he's been there for that long, but I think he really likes Minnesota, and it's a Big 10 job. There's a lot of money there. I think there's some investment from Minnesota, but with the divisions going away, I think that job could be a little more undesirable. But I think he kind of fits that Midwest team. So because he came from Western Michigan, so he's kind of been up in that area for a good bit.
S-
So I think he
s-
kind of fits Minnesota.
Sleeper game is the Louisiana Raging Cajuns.
Oh, the
Week
Raging
before
Cajuns, baby.
Michigan, week
Mm-hmm.
before Michigan, they're really talented. They got some dudes on their team.
Mm-hmm.
Just they don't need to sleep on them. They don't just because that's
Yeah,
your homecoming game. You got to be ready to play those guys because they are that's a good ball club.
for sure. Heading back over to the East though, and we are going to have to do some schedule jumping this year. The Maryland Terrapins, man, over under 7.5. This is a program that's kind of been capped just because they are in such a hard division with Michigan. They're with Ohio State. They're with Penn State, and they have kind of been with Michigan State whenever they've been really good in 2021 and in the past. So they've kind of been capped, and they're over under 7.5. They have Talia Tungavaloa. I just butchered that name, but they got him. They got him coming back at quarterback. They open up with Townsend. Then they have Charlotte and Virginia at home to open up the season. Those should be a good, easy 3 wins. Then they go on the road to Michigan State. They get Indiana at home. They're at Ohio State. They get Illinois at home off. They're at Northwestern, Penn State at home. They're at Nebraska. Then they get Michigan at home. Then they're at Rutgers. Really, once they get into the Big 10 slate, it's kind of rough, dude. They just go back and forth, flipping from home and away. Over under 7.5. Will, what are you doing with the Terrapins?
I'm hitting the over, man. I think
Nice.
yeah, I'm hitting the over with them. I think they can get to 8. Um their schedule is not really that tough to me. I see what you're saying about the home and away. That might
Mm-hmm.
be kind of rough on you, but at least like every other week you get to sleep in your bed, you know. So,
Yeah.
um, not necessarily they got at Ohio State. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's really their only tough road game. So I'm gonna go over right here, man. I think the quarterback kind of helps them out. Their offense is pretty good, man. They put up some points last year on Ohio State. It was a close game with them
Yeah.
going into the fourth quarter, dude. It was pretty close.
Dude,
This is a
they almost beat Michigan last year too.
yeah, they almost beat Michigan. This is a really good little sneaky little ball team. I think they can finish fourth in the East this year.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're the fourth best team, so I'm gonna hit the over.
I'm hitting over as well. I mean, they kind of got depleted this offseason in the wide receiver room, but they were able to bring a lot of transfer guys in. And then their head coach, Mike Loxley, is really excited about their wide receiver room, says that they think it could be better than last year, which is saying something because they had a couple guys in the room last year that were pretty solid. They did lose a lot on the offensive line too, but again, they really hit the portal, bringing some guys home to the DMV. And I think their defense is young, but they do have a lot of talent in the secondary. They have some talent in the linebacking slots. I just want to see their defensive line kind of step up and maybe exceed expectations. And I think if their defensive line exceeds expectations, then they can go 8-4. I mean, the key games to me are the at Michigan State, the at Ohio State, the Illinois game, the Penn State game, at Nebraska, Michigan, and Rutgers. And I mean, just don't lose to teams like Michigan State. Don't
Beat the
lose to teams
teams you
like
should beat. I
exactly.
mean,
Just
you're
beat the
more
teams you're
talented.
supposed to beat.
You're way more talented than them. And hey, anything can happen on any given Saturday. You might sneak up on Michigan. You never know,
Right.
dude. That's a
Right.
sleepy game for them. They just played Penn
Exactly.
State.
They
They're
could be
might
beat
coming off
up.
a yeah, they could be beat up, and they're probably looking ahead to Ohio State.
Yeah,
So you might can beat them, man. Just beat the teams that you're supposed to beat.
man. Now, this team coming up is a team that I really don't like them. I don't know why I don't really like them, but it's the Michigan State Spartans. Their over under is 6.5 wins, man. They had a magical 2021 and then they tanked in 2022. They had one of the worst secondaries in the country last year. They had one of the worst total defenses in the country last year. Over under 6.5. I'm going under. I think they might make a bowl. They might. I just think there's way too many question marks. Well, what are you thinking? Over under 6.5 for the
I'm
Spartans?
going under, and I think Mel Tucker's going to get fired.
Fired.
Yeah, I think he's going to get fired. I think he's going to get let go.
Ooh.
Third year in a row where the defense isn't is terrible, and you're a
Mm-hmm.
defensive head coach.
Yeah.
I think they're going to go in a different direction after this year. Just a lot of uncertainties with the roster, man. We don't know who the quarterback's going to be. They lost their guy transferred to Auburn. Um,
Thorn.
yeah, Mr. Thorne, who everybody thinks is going to be Auburn's savior, I guess. Um, but yeah, dude, I'm going under. Might make a bowl game, but if they don't make a bowl game, he is gone, man.
I mean, their schedule's not hard if you're Georgia, but if you're Michigan State, this is a hard schedule. They open up with Central Michigan at home, then they get Richmond at home, they get my Washington State Huskies at home. I'm
Go
really high.
dogs.
I'm really high on the Huskies this year. Then they get Maryland at home. We just talked about we both think that the Terps are going to hit the over. So that's a game that we think Michigan State is going to lose. Then they go to Iowa State
They
to
lose them
close
3 in
out.
a row, dude.
Yes, yeah,
Washington, Maryland, and Iowa, 3 in a row.
for sure that could definitely happen. Then they luckily are able to get into the off week after that little 3-game stretch, and they're at Rutgers. Then they get Michigan at home. Then they're at Minnesota. They get Nebraska at home. Then they go to Ohio State. Then they're at Indiana, and then they get Penn State at home, dude. They have a grueler of a schedule
Bro,
when it
I'm
comes to
telling
Michigan
you, dude.
State,
Go ahead and mark
dude.
up the big 3 as L's.
Dude,
Michigan,
and
Ohio State, and Penn State. Then you got Minnesota and Nebraska.
dude,
So you might only win 4 games.
they get the top 4 teams from the West. I mean,
Dude, yeah.
goodness
They got a
gracious,
tough dude, they got a
they have
tough
a
schedule.
grueler.
Yeah,
They
man.
have a grueler, and I mean, I think their offense could struggle because they're saying the quarterback might be Noah Kim. He was a 2020 recruit, so they really don't know what to have on him. But
Man's
but
30 now.
yeah, but so just between their 2 quarterbacks that they only have 20 career passes thrown in games. So they're really giant question marks. Their 2 top receivers from last year, Keon Coleman and Jaden Reed. Reed went to the NFL. Keon Coleman's going to be a difference maker down in Tallahassee this year for Florida State. And their rushing performances last year were pitiful. Absolutely pitiful.
Yeah.
They only averaged 3.8 yards a carry, only about 115, 118 yards per game. And I mean, all of their offensive linemen are returning, but if all you're returning is crap, you're still going to be crap.
Yeah.
And I mean, their defense was terrible last year. Their secondary was awful. They're saying their front 7 might be the highlight of the team, but if what you have behind that front 7 is trash, then your defense is going to be trash. I have them going under, probably a hard under. And like you were saying, they have a chance where maybe they could only win 4 to 5 games, which stinks because I mean, I'm so torn on the Spartans. I want them to be good, but at the same time, I don't because I just don't like
Dude, FanDuel has them at 5.5 win totals.
them. Oh, 5.5?
Yeah, dude.
Whew. If they're 5.5, do I take the over at 5.5?
I took the under at 5.5.
Whew.
5-7, dude. That's
5-7. Let's see. Win, loss also. That's 2 wins. Rutgers is going to be a win. I'm going under 5.5.
yeah, dude.
Yeah.
It's only 5 wins.
Dude, dang. That's rough. Do you really think they would fire him? I mean,
Yes.
he has
Third year.
but he has a massive buyout. I think they're paying him like $9.5 million a year.
Dude, they would figure it out, man. Telling you. I mean, would you
That's a
keep riding it
lot of
out
money.
with a terrible defense?
I would
And
maybe give him one more year, but
he's
he'd be on the hot seat, but I don't think they would just up
and
and
he's
fire him.
supposed to be a defensive coach with Kirby Smart and Nick Saban,
Yeah.
and you can't figure it out.
I mean, it's for sure a possibility. I just don't see it happening. Kind of moving on along. One of the most hyped teams coming into this year is the Nebraska Cornhuskers, man. Everyone was hyped on them coming into last year. People are even more hyped on them coming into this year because they get the new coach with Matt Rule getting fired from the Carolina Panthers, coming back into college football, man. Over under 6.5, man. They haven't been to a bowl game in what, like 5 years?
It's been a while.
It has been a while, man. And so they open up the season. They are at Minnesota. They're at Colorado. I cannot wait for that Nebraska Colorado game. That's really going to be a fun game to watch because that's a pretty big rivalry but there's a bunch of people in the South that don't really know that that's that big of a game. But I mean, that's a massive game. Then they get Northern Illinois at home, Louisiana Tech at home, Michigan at home. They are at Illinois off week, Northwestern at home, Purdue at home, at Michigan State, Maryland at home, at Wisconsin, and ending the season at Iowa.
Oof, those last 2
Six
games are tough.
tough, 6.5. I think this is one of the best lines that Vegas has put out. I think it's dead on the money. Wouldn't bet a single dollar of mine on it. I'm going over by a whisker.
So you got them at 7 wins.
7-5, barely, like barely 7-5.
I got them over as well at
Nice.
7-5. I think Matt's going to make a difference for him, dude. They've had some of the most one possession games the past 2 years, man.
Right,
they're close,
dude.
and they upgraded at quarterback.
Yes,
So
Jeff Sims from Georgia Tech is going to be a baller for him.
yeah, man. So they brought in a pretty good little transfer class.
Mm-hmm.
Brought a few players in from Florida. So I think they can be pretty good, a little better than they have been, man. Their last coach just had a lot of bad luck, dude. Just nothing could fall his way. So I'm going over, but barely. I think this is going to be an improved Nebraska team.
Kind of like you were saying, Jeff Sims going to come in with the quarterback position. I think he was kind of underutilized at Georgia Tech. And there's a bunch of people that are really hyped on him. He has the arm, but he also has the legs where like he can get out of trouble. He can create plays on the fly. I think their running back room is kind of going to be a running back by committee deal. I do know that Rules said that he really wants to get back to just ground and pound football and just winning games by taking over games. So I think that running back room is going to be kind of a key swing position for them to just really be able to do what they want to do on the offensive side of the ball. It took multiple wide receivers in the portal, kind of like you were saying. Look for, I think his name is Billy Kemp. He was a wide receiver from Virginia. He's probably going to be their wide receiver one. And then the biggest question mark on that team, can Eric Gilbert, one,
Yeah. See
can
the field. Just show up.
can he see the field? But I think he has to get a waiver. I think they're still waiting on a waiver to get him eligible. So hopefully he can get that waiver so he can
Man,
so he can play out on he can play out on the field, because I mean
been a huge disappointment.
well, he's just had so much stuff off the field. He had a monster freshman season at LSU, then he almost went to Florida. Then he was enrolled at Georgia, and then there's just all
Exactly.
that.
So he's been a huge disappointment because he had such a good year. We had such high hopes for him,
Yeah.
and we just hadn't seen him since. And
Yeah.
we thought he was going to be Kyle Pitts 2.0, and
Yeah.
he just hadn't. We hadn't seen him on the field in a while, man. I know he's had some stuff going on.
Yeah.
So I hope he's healthy. I hope he's fresh. I hope he's happy, and I hope we can see him play.
I hope we can see him play, dude. Just because if he's there and he's fully there,
he's gonna make some plays, bro.
Dude, he's a freak. He's an absolute freak, dude. So he was in the same class as Darnell Washington, and just having those two tight ends coming out of the same class, they were like, oh my gosh, these are like generational type guys, and he for sure is. Do you think if Eric Gilbert was 100%, would you rather have him or would you rather have Brock Bowers?
I want Brock Bowers.
Yeah, he is a beast. So we are both over for Nebraska. The last team we're really going to dive into, the Illinois Fighting Illini, 6.5 wins. Over under. Will,
I can go ahead and tell you, I'm going under. Schedule's too tough when it gets pulled up. Don't know if Brett Bielema can get the guys fighting enough. They have a really tough schedule, just because they got Kansas as a non-con. Man, they get Maryland, Penn State, Wisconsin. Dude, they got a tough little schedule at Minnesota, at Iowa. Dude, I'm going under 6-6. I think they're going to make a bowl game, though.
I'm going under as well. They lost a phenomenal secondary. I think they lost I think two of their secondary guys got drafted in like the top 40 picks. So, I mean, they lost a lot of talent on the secondary. They lost their leading rusher, Chase Brown. Their front seven's going to be tough, though. The front seven of that defense is probably going to be the highlight of the team. They did bring Luke Altmaier in, quarterback from Ole Miss. They brought him in as a transfer. I know some people down here will be familiar, but kind of like you said, that schedule, it's just not really favorable. I think the Kansas game is going to be the game. I mean, that's so early in. That's really early in the season. So let's just say if they win the Kansas game, we can chalk Toledo up as a win. Let's say they win Kansas. You can chalk Florida Atlantic up as a win. Purdue's going to be a tough. Purdue's going to be a pretty tough game for them just because it's on the road. So I'd say they're 4-1, and then they got Nebraska. That's kind of a toss-up game. Let's say they lose that. Then they go on the road to Maryland. Let's just say they lose that. Then they have Wisconsin at home. They're probably going to lose that off week. And then they got Indiana, and let's just say they lose Minnesota. Then they got Indiana. That's 5. At Iowa, loss. And, I mean, they're sitting right there at 6 if you count the Northwestern game as a win. I mean, I think this is a really good line, too. I mean, this is a great line.
They're going to have to upset. If they want to hit the over, they're going to have to beat either Nebraska, Maryland, or Wisconsin. One of those 3 games. They're going to have to win one of those 3.
Yeah.
They want to hit the over. Or the Minnesota game. One of those 4. One of those 4, they're going to have to beat one of them if they want to hit the over.
And I mean, I think they're a really good coach team under Brett. So I think Coach Bielema, I mean, crazier things have happened. They could upset a couple people, and they could go to 8-4. But I mean, God, this
don't sleep on them. Don't sleep on them.
That's a great way to put it.
They're on your schedule. Don't sleep on them because they will beat you.
Yes.
because he's a great coach. He does great things with scheme. He's very good at coaching what he has.
Mm-hmm.
And he's
Man.
done it since he was at Arkansas. He did it when he was at Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm. So kind of rounding out the Big Ten, they have a couple teams at the bottom that really aren't that great, that we're not going to spend that much time on. You have Purdue over under 5.5. The schedule is just too
Under.
brutal. Under 5.5. The schedule's too brutal. It's a complete philosophy change, going from a really offensive minded coach with Jeff Brom to head coach Ryan Walters. He was a defensive coordinator at Illinois last year. They do get transfer Hudson Card in from Texas, OC Graham Harrell coming in, so they maybe could have a little spark on offense with them. But I just think it's too much of a culture change, and the schedule's too brutal. I'm going under. I think you said you're going under too.
Yeah.
All right. Then we got Indiana, 3.5 under. They're gonna stink. They might be the second worst team in the conference.
Yeah, I'm gonna go under as well. I don't think they're very good.
Rutgers, 3.5.
Under.
Just because someone's gonna have to go over, Rutgers is going over.
Nah.
They are going over, dude.
They
I
might
think,
can get to 4. I did put a
yeah,
path for them to go to 4. I did write
yeah.
this down.
And like just because I think someone's gonna have to go over, like I just can't say all these crappy teams are going to go under. I think there's a path for them to go over. It's a very very narrow path, but
They're
I
gonna have to
think
beat the teams we're talking about.
they're going to walk it straight and true, and they're going to go over. And then poor Northwestern, their over unders 2.5, and I'm going under. I'm going under. This team
Shit.
could easily go 1-11, 2-10.
Just because
Pat
what's happened to
Fitzgerald,
them
yeah,
recently.
I think that Pat Fitzgerald kind of got screwed because he had just a couple players that were coming after him. They got pissed that they didn't get what they wanted when they were on the team. There was some hazing that was happening, some really weird stuff, but he didn't know. He had no clue, and it wasn't to what the extent of what these people were saying that like the coach knew, and he would give like a little signal at practice like to go run them. So I think Pat Fitzgerald got screwed. I think the players are going to kind of give up. I think the players are going to kind of protest, and then when you aren't good in the first place and you have stuff like this happen, man, I think it could be a
Oh,
long, ugly season.
it's gonna be a disaster.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll watch one Northwestern game.
I might watch one or two just because I'm a sicko.
Yeah, you are a little freak.
I'm a
Yeah,
college football freak, baby.
yeah, they won't be on my TV. I can tell you that. Especially if they
They'll
got
end up being on one or two of mine.
if there's other games on, any game on, they will not be on my TV.
I don't blame you one bit, man. I had a blast breaking down the Big Ten, man. I can't wait to break down the best
SEC.
conference in the land next week, baby. The
Oh yeah,
SEC.
man. I'm
And
ready
I
for
mean,
that, dude.
dude, if we break down the SEC, then it'll be time to kind of start getting into our predictions for the conferences, the winners, Heisman, playoff, and then it's time to kind of introduce them to the pick'ems.
Yeah,
Kind of,
pick'ems are
get that.
fun,
So the
competitive.
the pick'ems are going to be really awesome. We're kind of getting that rolling. We can get all of that set up. We can kind of start breaking down those games, man. But I'm super excited for the season to come. I'm excited to get on the road. I am excited to get into stadiums. I'm excited to get on the tailgate scenes on Saturday. I'm excited for pads to start popping and just
Out of
going,
the
baby.
3 we're going to, what stadium are you more excited to see? And then which atmosphere outside of the stadium are you excited to see? Because they're all 3 different.
I mean, I mean, I've I have been to plenty of Auburn games, so it's not really Auburn because I have been to Iron Bowls. The main reason I'm excited to go to the Auburn game is so I can bring you, is so you can see an Iron Bowl whenever you're a grown up and you can just see that atmosphere at its peak. Alabama, I'm excited to go to Alabama, but it's Alabama. Kind of I kind of know what to expect, but I've never been. That'll be the biggest stadium that I've ever been to. Up
I'm
to
ready to
that point.
see LSU.
That's what I was getting to. I am ready
Uh,
because we've always heard the hype about LSU, man, and I'm just ready to get down there. One, see if the fans are really as bad as they say they are.
I'm ready to get some
See,
crawfish, bro.
yeah, see if we get invited to any tailgate. See if we can eat some crawfish. See if we maybe eat some gator. And then I
Yeah.
am excited to see the in stadium atmosphere. I pray that game is at night. I really, really do.
Yeah. Oof.
That's the
It's
week
one.
after the LSU Alabama game. So
It's gonna be.
there's
They're getting a night game for that game, right?
that'll be the 8 o'clock CBS game. There's no way. I mean, it's the LSU Florida game. It's their biggest home game of the season. Well, it's one of them. They play Texas A&M at home, I think, but it's one of their biggest home games of the season. Coming off of that Alabama game, they're gonna want LSU in prime time. I don't think they'd put them in the 3:30 slot that day. They might put them in the 3:30 slot, but even if they do, it'll kind of turn in tonight. But I really hope they get like a 7 o'clock ESPN kick because
That's
that would
more
be
likely.
awesome. Yeah,
That's more
I mean,
likely what it's gonna be.
I'm super excited to get down to Baton Rouge and the real Death Valley and see
Yeah,
if
man.
see if it's all real, man. But I've enjoyed breaking down the Big 10 with you. Will we can't forget, y'all can't forget, subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Will, you've been killing the TikTok game, man.
It's fun trying to come up with ideas what to put on there.
Yeah,
Trying to change it up, not just do our podcast, have little fun videos on
yeah,
there. It's fun trying to
yeah.
make them. So seems like people enjoy them.
Oh
So
yeah.
keep trying to come up with ideas, see what I can do.
And y'all can follow us on all those platforms at the College Football Experience. We are the College Football Experience. Will, any last words before we say
Nah, man.
goodbye to our beautiful followers and listeners?
See you guys next week when we do the SEC.
See y'all later.
See ya.